we in the town at our code committee have talked with the fire department and the building department about the building, materials, design, and all that. Those decisions are all based on state codes, and the municipality cannot go higher. We have been watching and we'll be paying a sort of a partnership role with Princeton, who also has an Avalon Bay development coming in, and we will work with them to work with Avalon Bay. I've spoken with the principal of Avalon Bay. They are going to be making some announcement about the Maplewood site and the different type of construction that they will be using here than what was used in Edgewater. So these things are coming up. We think these are positives for the neighborhood. These are people willing to invest millions of dollars in Springfield Avenue and in an area where, frankly, it's been difficult to get people to invest. So I think these are, we want to work with them to move them forward. So, if anybody has any questions? Yes.
Vic, I read in the Maplewoodian.com that Maplewood sold their low-income housing unit, the 23.5 or 10% low-income housing units, for $100,000. You know, the developer paid Maplewood $100,000 for those 23.5 low-income housing units. You know, and there's that concern that we talk about diversity so much in Maplewood, and here is Maplewood selling off the low-income housing unit, the 23.5 units, for $100,000, and saying that they're going to put that $100,000 into helping, you know, low-income housing in Maplewood. You know, try to help people who may have some concern about that, being that in Maplewood and South Orange, you always tout diversity, but we gave away that opportunity for low-income housing units.
Well, first off, I don't know if you read it or if you read it wrong or the information's wrong, but the information you just put out there is wrong. We've been working with the developer. The developer has a requirement of 23 units. 6 of those units will be built on site. The other 17, he will be paying us $340,000 so that we can meet our housing rehabilitation obligation. The affordable housing obligation with the state is a two-part. One is new housing, and one is rehabilitation. We have in Maplewood a requirement to rehabilitate 91 existing structures. These are people who live here, people who meet the income qualifications of the state, the affordable housing income qualifications, and they get a loan that they don't have to pay back if they live there for 5 years. We will be able to do 20 of these. To do 91 units, we have to raise $1.8 million. So by getting $340,000 from this developer, we are going to be able to make a significant dent towards that requirement of 91 units.
So that means to say we're only having 6 instead of 23.5 low-income housing units.
What I'm saying is we're having 6 units and 17 rehabs, and that equals the 23.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Environmental concerns, they're top on my list since I got a letter a month ago about Louisville having a plume of hydrocarbon waste that's spreading out underneath where we're sitting right now. So that's, first of all and foremost, in that revelation comes the idea that PSE&G, which has been here for a long time and functioned in many roles in PSE&G, from what I understand, has potential for opening up another issue. The Daib site that's on the corner across from the police station also had to be remediated in order to move forward, and I believe was one of the reasons from my experience at the meetings we attended was a significant issue holding back certain developers that buying out the environmental concerns in any of the places that used to be gas stations or light industry, the Superfund site that's across the street where the chain place is, the Electro Mills place. These are strong concerns. I'm in the neighborhood and I'm watching. I've been in this neighborhood since 2001, so I've been around since when the dark street extended all the way up to Prospect. And I was told when I lived on Prospect that if I could see Springfield Avenue from my house, house. I would never have a property value increase, and I would never have a nice house. And those things have turned out to be completely untrue. Now we're talking about moving development in these neighborhoods where these people are living, and I think it's fantastic that we're moving that direction. We have to address, I have to know now, I have to know beforehand that they're not going to scrape the top of PSE&G, drop a sensor in the ground, and pull something up and not remediate, or at least come to some attention as to how remediation can exist just to the boundary of the property, but not address the broader issue of a spreading plume of groundwater contamination, which is being addressed right now in front of my house, so I have to be a little bit more concerned than usual. Anyway, can you address that? What are your thoughts on it?
At the PSE&G, actually at the site next door, at Maplewood Commons, PSE&G site, Davies property, particularly any of the sites that go from a little higher than here down, everything, our DPW, everything, the groundwater is just flowing down. So anything that got contaminated on Springfield Avenue with the gas stations and the auto dealers and all that, and just people riding, and there used to be trolleys. We understand that even some of that stuff is in the ground. We even found the tracks when we were doing work down by Jacoby Street. So all the water plume is going down. So there's two things that happen when you're doing your environmental cleanup. You got soil contamination and you got the groundwater. Soil usually is from dumping, historic fill. When they built things years ago and they had an open pit, they would just dump anything in there. Or you have underground storage tanks. They could be either gasoline or oil. Some for heating, some for running vehicles and things like that. So at PSE&G site and over here, the first priority is to clean the soil. And you do that. There's a process where you remove the soil. You have to put down certain chemicals there, and then you do a series of testings. And you have to do so many tests in order to get clearance from the DEP. So at both, obviously, Maplewood Commons because it's built, but at PSE&G, they've cleaned up all the contaminated soil, and they got their, it used to be called a no further action. It's now called an RAO. But it essentially means that they've met the criteria of cleaning up the soil. The groundwater is a different problem. The groundwater you have to test. You have to test it for a number of chemicals. There's a particular one or two chemicals which are very hard to get out. And what you have to do in that case is you have to continue to monitor that. In instances where you're building garages underground, you have to put, vapor, or you have to do some of that vapor. Even over here, they had to put some vapor wraps and the ability so that whatever gets contaminated doesn't end up in the garage. So there's things that you have to do when there's groundwater present. So there is groundwater contamination there. It has gone down from, I think they've been testing it now for about 7 months, and every month it goes down. But they told us yesterday that they'll probably never reach on this one particular compound, they'll never reach it. And it will. The reason you reach it, two reasons. One, you want the groundwater to be clean. The other thing is people won't buy the property if there's contamination, because you buy the contamination. In fact, the town has looked at property to do parking lots and stuff, but we weren't going to buy the contamination because it becomes hundreds of thousands of dollars. So at PSE&G, they now have worked a deal where they're going to do continual monitoring. There are wells in there, and it'll just take a couple of years. They take the water out, put water in, and they just recirculate it to clean it.
So more pertinent to my point is an existing business like Woolly Fuel, and since we are in the contamination zone right now in terms of groundwater, we've got a 6-year waterfront study. I've read the studies. I'm pretty familiar. I'm science-oriented as well, so I do know it's trichlorobenzenes and some of the hard chlorine-based chemicals that are not going to wash out. So what concerns me, first of all, is as much as I'd love to believe that development is currently coming down Springfield Avenue is not going to leapfrog over some problem areas. They're just going to remain problematic. And just from any standpoint, the empty everything that's on Springfield has a means of we got to the police station, there's 15 empty buildings going west heading out to Prospect. Those buildings are slowly but surely coming around, but they're businesses that, in essence, we're going to build new storefronts. We're going to go out to further out and towards Chancellor. We'll build more storefronts, but they're still empty storefronts. Much more salient to the Springfield Avenue development is to get the sections that are already white lined and yellow lined and painted and speed bumped up to speed, and have those find a way to bring developers into our smaller scale. The larger strokes are awesome. I love the fact that we're going to get 200 or 300 apartments. I'm not in love with the fact that those 200 or 300 apartments are going to drive through my neighborhood and think it's a ghetto. I mean that in the most literal sense. Vacant buildings, vacant lots, and industrial sites that are not remediated. I personally think that Woolley Fuel has outlived its validity as an operation in our town. I don't believe we should have a place that dispenses diesel fuel on a commodity and commercial level. And so for me, if we're going to leapfrog and get Avalon Bay to come in and drop in a bunch of apartments and overlook the substantive and long-term investment of people who live in this neighborhood, the people who are in this room, are not going to live in those apartments. I doubt highly I could afford to live in the apartments next door. In fact, I know that I can't. I've already investigated. But I can afford to live in my house. Amazingly enough, I could buy a house in Maplewood. I couldn't afford to rent here. So bearing that in mind, I'd like to at least see, since this is a community meeting, and those properties are very close to us. In fact, I would say that right now, the contamination that's spreading underground, the plume is drawn quite largely and it extends into this neighborhood and over on Jacoby Street. I would like to find out if we're going to address that issue, if we're going to stop having properties just left behind as we expand and give tax considerations to major corporations that probably don't need them, incentives to purchase land and develop it for things that are much larger than the people who actually live here. And not anywhere here. Here is in Maplewood. There are neighborhoods in Maplewood where people certainly live in and want. But this side of the town is the town side that has the affordable housing, the schools that are for me desirable, the places that I want to continue to see grow. Can you address any of that?
Yeah, I mean we're working with developers to look to reuse existing buildings. There's some challenges there because the buildings, some of them are contaminated inside. There's two types of contamination. You have your underground contamination, you have your building contamination, your asbestos, could be some lead, issues like that. So some of them have some of that contamination. There's a couple in particular that were car dealers that have had it. But you saw we were able to get deals, the Ford dealership, they made it into deals and made it into a viable business, and that was a challenge there because they had some contamination.
I will point out on the upside, because I do sound a little Sturman drawn here, is Walgreens is genius for me. It's worked out great. 2 doors down. It's super convenient. Yeah. But I don't even know it's there because we did make the steps to bring the property. Walgreens moved their business to the front of Springfield. They don't deal out of the front. It's not a store. It's not a walking area. People don't walk down to Walgreens. But by doing that, moving forward, putting a parking lot that was a see-through that goes through the 2 streets, making sure that everything they've done, the high fences, where it's my neighbor, we both know that it's been done with mostly pretty good. Worse for you, better for me, probably nothing at all for the guy next door. And so that's a good example of what we're going to bring something in, take over.
We're working on that.
That's the way to go.
We are working on that. We're working with large developers and we're working with small scale developers who will take a piece of property. It is more of a challenge on the small scale. There's also, and we have this in the village and we have this on Springfield Avenue. We have some owners of property, some landlords, who are not with the program. They're absentee, they're looking for quick dollars, quick turnarounds. There's nothing quicker than putting in a nail salon for 6 months. It's cash payments, it's a good deal. You can let it go. People can, they can make it work. So we're trying to get sort of the higher end, working with the developers. The Springfield Avenue Partnership, we've been working with some of the businesses. The person that we're talking to about the diner, for example, owns a number of small restaurants around the metropolitan area. And that's what we're looking for. Personally, I think that is going to be the way to go, is to find people that are already in business, that want to expand, or maybe put a family member into an expansion. And that's what we've been looking at. We have not had a lot of great success